You see, something's going to happen. Something wonderful.
My God, it's full of stars.
Internal documents show the CIA felt a drug derived from the mushrooms could remain an agency secret. What in the world were they looking for with the magic mushrooms?
I think the best answer to that is that they were looking for fundamental information on compounds that would be capable of causing changes in behavior, changes in mental attitude.
Did you ever consider what would have happened if any of these substances were given to, say, unwitting people?
Oh, I don't remember having considered that specifically.
What if you... I trust perhaps you've thought about it.
Well, I haven't worried about it. Your question again, what would I have thought had I known that
any of these substances would
have been given to
unwitting persons?
You mean a hostile agent of another government?
No,
I think that was probably one of the things they had in mind.
I mean testing it out on an American citizen.
I guess I must seem very, very cold-blooded about this, but I don't recall ever having been very much preoccupied with that issue.
Welcome to the NY Patriot Show. Yeah, so obviously we're continuing it off with the MKULTRA series. This is part 5, and this will also be the episode that ends this RSS feed. So everybody remember, if you want to continue listening to the NY Patriot Show, we'll be dropping on the Occult Rejects RSS feed. We'll still be dropping, on BitChute, Rumble, and obviously YouTube, which it shares with the Occult Rejects anyway. But to continue the audio, you're going to have to switch over. So, Thrash, we're back at it again, part 5. Of who knows how long. There'll probably be a 6 or a 7 over on the other RSS feed on the Occult Rejects. But this one, I'm just ending it here anyway. For the new year, switch it over to...
This is it.
Yeah. So, I guess in this episode, we kind of wanted to get back... I know we were going to go back to kind of like George White and the trap houses and stuff like that. We're going to also, hopefully in this episode, depends on how much we get done, maybe talk about Donald a little bit. Lily is a very interesting story with a dolphin and acid. And Harris Isbell and another place called Ravensbook. How do you say that? Concentration camp. So a lot of stuff that hopefully we can pack into this episode. If not, we'll have to do it in the next one. But Thrash, you want to let everybody know what's up with you? And where they can find you if they want to hit you up or whatever.
Yeah, just Narmosh Thrash right now on Instagram. I haven't been doing anything. I've been hectic.
Well, when I leave you alone for the MKUltra series, you'll have time to do your own shit.
Yeah, I've been working on it on the weekends, but just all test stuff and practice stuff, and yeah. All
right, so. Yeah,
I did email a guy that I want to interview. No response yet, so we'll see.
Yeah, hit him up again. You never know. All right, well, I'll put your link in the bottom for that. And I guess we'll go forward from there. And we'll get into, I guess you can start it off whichever way you really wanted to. I know you mentioned George's trap houses. Getting into George White.
Yeah.
He's a very interesting character.
Because he ran both safe houses on the East Coast in New York and in San Francisco.
Yep. Yes.
And I think he had another one on the West Coast. I can't remember though.
I know definitely, just from what I can see in front of me, I'm looking at my notes. I'll just go over what I have because it's actually not much, and I think that will cover maybe 2 of these places. In 1953, White rented a house at 81 Bedford Street in New York City's Greenwich Village under the name of Morgan Hill, the same one he used several years later to set up Telegraph Hill apartment at 225 Chestnut Street in San Francisco. On 225 Chestnut Street in San Francisco, the CIA spent much time renovating a bedroom, and this was around 1955. George White was in charge of the interior remodeling. White had a long career in the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, despite not being much of a decorator. So, I mean, it's so funny, like, that was his job, was decorating. Getting White on board became a high objective when the CIA started conducting drug trials. Pictures of French can dancers and flowers were hung on White's walls. He covered the windows with like red bedroom drapes. He used like black silk mats to frame like several posters by Toulouse-Lautrec, whoever that is. White waited for the action to start while sitting behind the mirror with a martini. Unaware males would be coaxed into the bedroom by prostitutes where they would be given LSD, and White would watch them from behind the mirror. The organization also looked at when during a sexual encounter, information might be best collected from a source. So, I mean, I guess I can understand like, maybe where they're getting that idea from. Maybe like, you know, the whole idea of like pillow talk and shit like that. Maybe, you know, you get these rich fucking dumb white guys. They just start fucking running their mouths to brag.
100%.
Small sums of cash are given to the sex workers in exchange for their services. White promises to step in if the women ever had any future encounters with police authorities. His diaries show that Gottlieb and Lashbrook met him at Bedford Street, at the Bedford Street apartment. June 8th, 1953, the entry said, Gottlieb brings $4,123.27 for a hall deposit. And September 16th entry added Lashbrook at 81 Bedford, Owen Winkle, and LSD surprise / Ken Wash. You know, so I don't know what the fuck's really being said there, but they did mention LSD. In 1955, White moved from the safe house to San Francisco, and he took over as regional head of Bureau of Narcotics. Apparently, the Chestnut Street duplex also was used by the Bureau to lure narcotics dealers and then arrest them. Some funny shit. In 1956, white narcotics agent Ira C. Feldman, who posed as an East Coast mobster, arrested 7 people from San Francisco as a part of a heroin ring. Leo Jones, a friend of White, owned the company that installed the bugging equipment at the apartment. Now, I have also heard that supposedly he got like some kids from school or from some college or wherever to come and do this. But, I mean, no matter what, I don't think there's a dispute that there was stuff set up to record this shit. That doesn't seem to be in dispute. I just have seen different sources of like how it got there. The equipment included 4 DDR4 microphones disguised as wall outlets. These were hooked up to 2 Model F301 tape recorders monitored by agents in a listening post adjacent to the apartment. Jones also sold White a portable toilet for observation post. Wow. It was an L-shaped apartment with a beautiful view of San Francisco Bay, and White, who kept pictures of chilled martinis in the refrigerator, also had photos of like women being tortured and whipped. Supposedly. White's diaries indicate that Gottlieb continued to visit, flying out from Washington several times a year, at least until 1961. Another visitor was John Gittinger, a CIA psychologist who testified before Senate investigative committees that he met with Morgan Hall on numerous occasions to interview prostitutes about their drug and sex habits. So I have that for like 2 out of, I think you may be right. I think there might be like 3 possible houses that he had. So that's stuff on 2 of them right there. But yeah, I mean that's pretty wild that this guy had a toilet bowl made for himself. So like he didn't have to even like leave the room. Like these people didn't even have to leave the room. They just piss and shit right there.
Yeah, they didn't have to do
What
anything.
the
Yeah, somebody installed the equipment. Like the maid came in and cleaned the place up. Yeah, yeah, and then he just sat. Yeah, and then like the Bedford Street one in New York, it showed like they had like one of the mirrors. You could actually open it and walk into another building, and that was like how they got into one of them.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Yeah, and he would just sit there, and then there's a picture of the document of the toilet, and like I guess the bags that you put in the toilet, I would assume.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, and he just had a mini
wow.
fridge there and just sat there. I mean, and the guy was like into all kinds of like sadomasochism stuff, and yeah. But look, you can see here, you can see the recorders, the microphones. There's a lock picking knife,
listening aid kits, yeah. Microphone, knife,
even lock pick. So he's picking people's locks, and
then we got these too, right? Oh yeah, it even has the French can dancers picture that I mentioned. There we go. And that's even on that. Yeah.
I was gonna say that, but I was just letting you flow.
That's fine.
Yeah, it has that on there. Floral pictures, the rugs, what the size of the rugs,
non-skid rug pads,
drapery hangers, and the labor. So he's not putting those up either. He's drinking martinis, sitting somewhere.
Yeah, on the fucking portable toilet right here.
Yeah, there you go.
Disposable bags.
24 disposable bags.
15 cents each. Wow.
From criminal investigation, intelligence, and law enforcement equipment. What a great company.
It's a good racket. Yeah, you know, and like probably somebody's involved who owns that company.
Oh, 100%.
I think a lot of that shit happens.
He knows
too.
Somebody there.
A lot of companies that like these 3-letter agencies, I think like subcontract out or like buy bulk of shit to use for things. I think it's all like within like a network.
Or like a part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, did you have any more that you wanted to actually cover on him after we get off these houses?
No, that's about it. We talked a little bit before about him, and I wanted to start off with the interest that the CIA had with mushrooms, and it basically came from the story of Claudius. So the story of Claudius was his wife basically killed him, and he loved mushrooms, and she got a bunch of poisonous mushrooms and basically gave it to him for dinner, and he died from the mushroom consumption, and that story intrigued Sidney Gottlieb and stuff. You know, to kind of start looking into more of mushrooms and different types and uses for them. Yeah, and Claudius actually died on October 13th, the year 54, supposedly.
Yeah, supposedly.
But that's what got their interest was that's this old story. And his wife was named Agrippa.
Agrippa.
Yeah, Agrippa the Younger.
It's interesting. I mean, there was an occultist and Agrippa with the last name Agrippa.
Yeah, so that was their interest. And so Gordon Wasson, he and his wife, he was kind of more like an amateur mycologist. And he would travel all to Russia and stuff. His wife was like of Russian descent, and he would go all over Russia and basically all over the world studying mushrooms and everything. But he actually he was vice president of public relations for J.P. Morgan. So the VP of J.P. Morgan. So he basically he ran the account for the Vatican and the Pope for J.P. Morgan. And so this is R. Gordon Wasson we're talking about, this guy that's going to go down to Mexico. There's weird connections also with J.P. Morgan, like R. Gordon Wasson's boss, Henry Davison. He's a Skull and Bones member at Yale.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He created Time Life, this Henry Davison guy. And just so happens Time Life is the one who bought the Zapruder film. So the VP of Time Life, he was also head of the psychological warfare program. And he also bought the Zapruder film. Yeah, C.D. Jackson was the VP of Time Life. So there's all these weird connections. There's kind of like connections to JFK assassination with Zapruder film, psychological warfare, Skull and Bones, Yale, J.P. Morgan.
Wow.
Yeah, very, very weird connections. And also a weird connection I found recently with Wasson. And the flight record was dated, so it was late. R. Gordon Wasson left from France on November 12th, 1953 to New York. So he left France to go back to New York.
Of course, New York.
And I was like, 53. I'm pretty sure Frank Olson was in 53. And sure enough, Frank Olson died November 28th, 1953 in New York. Now, I'm not going to say he was there or was a part of it, but that's very weird. The very same program that he'll be a part of to find mushrooms in Mexico, just 2 years later after Frank Olson dies, he lands in the very same town, the very same year, within a couple weeks of the event.
When you sent me that on the text message, I was like, yo, these like dates are like right next to each other. And I was like, you're talking about the dates, right? Because I was like, I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
You just sent them to me, and you're like, yeah, look at that. And I was like, yo, that's weird.
Yeah, I was like, huh, I wonder how close that was, because I'm pretty sure Olson was the same month and year, and I go back and it's within a couple weeks. And this program, the very trip to Mexico was a couple of years after Frank Olson died. So anyways, he takes a trip to Mexico. And this trip to Mexico, they actually, I found it very strange how he found this area. To me personally, I don't get how he found the town so fast. Reason being, I've heard there's another guy I've heard he's went to the town. He's studied all these mushroom rituals of, his name's Tom Lane. He has like different books and everything. He was saying in the 70s, it was like super hard to get to and like really hard to get to. And he says, it's like jungle, but like it's on the edge of the desert. So there's like a different desert in that area, and it's right on the edge. And then all of a sudden there's jungle, super rough jungle in the middle of nowhere. Mind you, these people don't have running water. People are using like burros and donkeys, even in the 70s. So I'm like, how did they know to go exactly there? so me personally, I don't have any proof on it because I never found anything. But I feel like the CIA had people down there already.
I would assume that.
Kind of knowing, okay, go here, like within this area or this vicinity or something. Yeah, it's I don't know, super rugged area. I mean,
I would think like they knew of it, or they had to have known of it before. It's not like he just went down there and was like, "Oh, I found it." Like they knew where they were heading to already. I think.
I don't know, very strange. But this area of Mexico, it's the Mazatec people. So they're more of like a tribe than so like of Mexican descent. They're different. Like they're actually that Mazatec people. They have a special language where they whistle, and they whistle like birds and stuff, and they can talk to each other back and forth like that.
Oh,
yeah, it's a very, very unique language. Yeah, but so Wasson, so they come down there. They meet this lady Maria Sabina, who's on the screen here. She's what you would call a curandera, or there's another term I'm missing. It starts with an S. There's like a higher version of a curandera, but she's like somebody. It would be like a shaman kind of thing, but that's what they refer to it as. And she had like all kinds of ceremonies and stuff devoted for different things, and these particular mushroom ceremonies with her people are typically done to find something or find something missing, find a missing person. So to convince her to do this, because it had never been done, this ceremony had never been done to a white person before then, or civilized people or anything. Before this, there's no magic mushrooms. There's nothing. People don't. That's not around. Even in the 50s, before this story came out in Life magazine or Time or whatever the hell magazine, we have pictures of it. People thought like a magic mushroom or a mushroom that made you like see things or something was just complete fiction. It was not a thing. After this trip and that story came out in 1957 in the magazine, it was out. And that was why they were worried about her giving the ritual to white people, because they didn't want it. It's a sacred thing. It's not supposed to be just something to just be taking for fun, having a party or something. Like these are serious things. So these rituals are they're very, very, very detailed. So typically they're done to find somebody missing or something missing. So that's what they told her. I can't quite remember what they said was missing. But she agreed to do the ceremony. And there's a few things with these ceremonies is that, okay, so when you pick them, they pick them the night before, like there's specific times. I can't remember the exact time frame, but it's in the moonlight. And
I think I've heard of that before.
And they're always picked in pairs. They're almost like considered families, like two. You always pick two. They're always picked in pairs. And there's certain types of magic mushrooms in the area that are different too. There's cubensis, there's mexicana, there's a couple different ones. And I can't remember what Marina Sabina preferred, but like that Tom Lane author, he says like the Mexicana variety are the best for those ceremonies, because he's like participated in those ceremonies with Maria Sabina in the 70s. So they pick them in pairs. Marina Sabina, they cover them. They're not eaten until the next night. And they're fresh. They're not dried. They're fresh. The ceremonies are always done at night. Now, there's other mushroom ceremonies that they do that can't be done in the daytime, but this particular one was at night. And so you can actually listen to the ceremony. He actually illegally recorded her because he wasn't supposed to record the ceremony, but you can go on Spotify and find her chants or music and stuff, so you can listen to that. Yeah, they had it on vinyl and everything.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, it came. I'm not sure if it came out the same time as a magazine, but it came out like in the 60s and 70s for sure. Yeah, like her. Yeah, and they weren't supposed to record her. It was not supposed to be recorded. It's supposed to be a very sacred thing that only certain people are supposed to know. Like I've talked about before with Native American stuff, you know, a lot of the shamans and medicine men and all that, it's like a calling to them. Like, it's not just like, oh, I'm going to be a medicine man. Like there's something that makes them become that. But so back to the ceremony, it lasts. I mean, you eat what she gives you. So you might eat like 40 mushrooms, and they soak them in honey. And what this does, there's like a science thing behind it. And they've actually been doing this since like way before the Aztecs and all that. They literally have like codexes and stuff that show these same ceremonies basically being done, and with the honey and the whole everything. Now, when the mushroom is covered in honey, you're not supposed to swallow the mushroom. You're just supposed to kind of let them dissolve with the honey. And that causes a reaction to where it happens faster, basically. It comes on faster. The honey actually originally was from wasp. There's actually a wasp in Central America that actually produces honey. And like the ancient Aztecs and stuff, that they would collect this very same honey, and it's a type of wasp. Now there's probably bees there and stuff, but back in the day, that's how they got the honey, was from it's a particular wasp that actually produces honey.
Shit.
But there's all kinds of things done with the ritual. She rubs tobacco on you. She chants. She does different stuff. She takes the mushrooms with you. She'll do all kinds of like animal noises and bird noises, and there's everything is done for a reason. Just mind you, these are the same ceremonies that have been passed down probably hundreds and hundreds of years. But the thing is, like with Marina Sabina, her ceremonies had a like Catholic spin to it, you know, because like when the Spanish came, you know, to preserve a lot of their stuff, they kind of tied it in with Catholicism and stuff, to where, you know, they weren't just throwing their knowledge down the drain.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've seen that done before, where it's just like you just start attributing, like you know, Catholic things to whatever you have, and it's like you just play it that way. You know, like a lot
Yeah.
of like voodoo and hoodoo was kind of like, I think was kind of like done like that for a while. It was very underhanded though, like, you know, where you still practice
Like the
what you did.
Santeria.
Yeah, but like you just attributed certain things to different, you know, looking characters to get away with it.
Yeah. They're like a saint or something. Let me talk a little bit about more of the ceremonies a little bit. So, so the god Quetzalcoatl. So the story is that these mushrooms, his penis was cut, and where his blood dropped is where these mushrooms actually spring up from the ground.
Oh wow!
And actually, to this day, most of these ceremonies, Quetzalcoatl is actually a main part of them, and there's a lot of people claim that they actually run into Quetzalcoatl in these ceremonies, in these mushroom trips. And it's just interesting to me, Quetzalcoatl with the penis being cut off. You got Osiris, this almost a similar story with where like a tree grows out of it, and with Nimrod. A mushroom could almost be considered a tree. Quetzalcoatl is a very, very important thing in a lot of these ceremonies for that very reason. The story is that his blood from his penis is what causes them to grow. Now, a lot of these mushrooms, certain ones will grow on like landslides. They'll grow on the new fresh soil that's showing. Some are like fires and stuff will kind of cause them. There's different ones, but there's different ones used for different things. And then like Maria Sabina the ones that she likes are actually have, instead of just psilocybin, it has an ingredient called psilocin in it, which is like a molecule weight difference from DMT. So they're very, very similar. In fact, some people say like if you do these ceremonies that it's stronger than ayahuasca, it's stronger than DMT. So like your typical mushroom that somebody like you get are more psilocybin. So it's more like Laffy, this and that, where there's certain other strains that has psilocybin in them, but they have more psilocin in them. And it's a more of like a hallucinogenic effect. But like this Tom Lane guy, he has a whole book on these ceremonies. I found it interesting. He has a lot of correlations with lightning, with thunder, like even Maria Sabina having like abilities, like she could find these like truffle things. But when like the lightning hits the ground, like they glow, and she can see them in the ground glowing, and she can dig them up out of the ground. And I just find that interesting, you know, looking into the clowns and all that, and the Heyokas were the same thing. The thunder beings, the thunder lightning is involved to become the medicine man for the Lakota. It's just so interesting, all these connections all over the world again with another subject.
Yeah, but maybe this is why Manson was going down there. Isn't there like a lot of weird stuff with always going to Mexico though?
I had the same thought, and you know what? He went there like it was after this article came out, and 100% he's seen this article in prison or something. Had to have seen it. And he went there like like the hippie thing, you know? And there's a lot of weird stuff with Manson going to Mexico. He supposedly killed like these French tourists, and yeah, there's some weird stuff. I don't want to get off on Manson.
Yeah. I shouldn't even have brought him up. I forgot who I was talking to.
But no, I had the same thought. I had the same fucking thought, because he was big into like Native American culture and like Mexico, Native Americans and stuff like that. But Gordon Wasson, so after he does this trip to Mexico, so a couple of years later in 1957, he does this magazine. And I think I sent you a picture of the magazine.
Yes, you did.
There we go. Perfect. Yeah, so 2 years later, right here you can see the date, May 13th, 1957, the Life article came out on the trip. On the article, right there on the headline, it says, "Great adventures and discovery of mushrooms that cause strange visions." And it was just this whole expose. You can see here, it has all kinds of taxonomy and scientific names and drawings and how they grow and the different versions and it has all kinds of stuff. It shows Maria Sabina in there. It goes into deep detail on everything on this whole thing. And this right here is what started the whole magic mushroom movement, everything. Like this is right here, the catalyst that started it all. This article. People wouldn't be taking them today if it wasn't for this article. Like it was, again, like I said earlier, it was that they were thought of as fairy tale. It was not a real thing. But the funny thing is like they went down to Mexico to get these, but there's types of cubensis and stuff that grow in the United States naturally. Like Colorado and Wyoming, their forests in the summertime, they have a type that grows. The higher elevations, it grows all over. So it's kind of funny that it took people that till 1955 to finally find a magic mushroom. And from this point on, the CIA was, they were trying to do everything they could.
Weaponize it, right?
Yeah, so they actually took samples of it to Albert Hoffman from Sandoz, the guy who created LSD. And he actually was able to isolate and create synthetic psilocybin, basically.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was like the first to actually synthesize the compound. And then, of course, they did all kinds of experiments with the mushrooms, with psilocybin. Yeah, basically the same thing they did with all the LSD and all the other drugs. There was like Harris Isbell and Dr. Harris Isbell and what's the guy's name? Gerald D. Klee. They did experiments with psilocybin. I'm sure it was more the synthetic kind that they would probably got from Sandoz. I honestly, I couldn't find much on it. I tried. There's just not much on it. Now there's other experiments from both these guys that you can find. LSD experiments, like Khalid did LSD experiments for the Army, and he worked at the Maryland Medical Psychiatric Institute for psychological and physiological tests on soldiers. Hundreds of soldiers were given LSD. So
Harris Isbell was big with like drug addiction stuff too. I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, and the prison experiments and stuff.
If you want, I have some stuff I can read about him if you want to take a break.
Yeah,
I've been going a bit. I have like 2 pages of stuff on Harris Isbell that I just thought was interesting. Some of the people he was associated with. Harris Isbell, he was from June 7th, 1910 and to December 23rd, 1994. He was an American pharmacologist and the director of research for NIM Addiction, NIMH, Addiction Research Center at the Public Health Service Hospital in Lexington, Kentucky from 1945 to 1963. He did extensive research on the physical and psychological effects of various drugs on humans, imprisoned narcotics offenders also. Early work investigated aspects of physical dependence, an important aspect of drug addiction, with opiates and barbiturates, while later worked as part of the MKULTRA project investigating psychedelic drugs, including LSD and mushrooms. The research was extensively reported in academic journals such as the Journal of Pharmacology and Experimental Therapeutics, Psychopharmacologia, and the AMA, Archives of Neurology and Psychiatry. Isbell and his associates, one was Abraham Wickler, published extensively on the effects of drugs, including opiates, synthetic opioids, barbiturates, alcohol, amphetamine, multiple psychedelics, and THC. And they did these on human subjects with over 125 publications. Among their experimental results were the documentation of physical dependence on barbiturates, physical dependence on alcohol, tolerance to amphetamine, the clinical use of opiate antagonists like Narcan as treatment for opioid overdoses. They also experimented with the ability of methadone to alleviate opioid withdrawal symptoms. They did cross-tolerance between LSD and psilocybin and the ability of to make pure THC to cause marijuana-like effects. Real quick, Abraham Wickler, I mentioned him before up there with all these experiments. He was an American psychiatrist, a neurologist, who made important discoveries in drug addiction. He was one of the first to promote a view of addiction as a conditioned behavior, and he made the first observations of conditioned response in drug withdrawal symptoms. His research on conditioning and relapse played a pioneering role in the neuroscience study of addiction. Wickler was born and grew up on the Lower East Side of New York City, the son of a Jewish butcher who immigrated from Ukraine. He earned an MD from the Long Island College of Medicine in 1935. He joined the Lexington Narcotic Hospital, a prison farm run by the United States Public Health Service for drug addicts in Lexington, Kentucky. And he was there as an intern in 1940. There, he ran the narcotic withdrawal ward and worked to quantify effects of opiates on addicts. He became interested in the neurophysiological, if I'm saying that right, physiological basis for addiction and the psychological changes caused by addiction. After the internship, he took up 1-year fellowship at Yale University and Northwestern University, where he studied the work of Ivan Pavlov in conditioning. Ivan, whatever you want to call him. He then, which is that whole thing with like ringing the bell on the dog. He then returned to Lexington as associate director and chief of the section of experimental neuropsychiatry. In his work there, he observed both classical conditioning and operant conditioning in humans and in studies with rodents. Secret in him. An operant conditioning in humans and, yes, rodents, like I said. From these observations, he hypothesized that conditioning led addicts to relapse long after the physical symptoms of their addiction had faded, and that the hustling behavior of addicts seeking their next fix was a symptom of conditioning. Some areas of interest described in Isbell's published work include physical and psychological effects of individual substances, including potential for dependence and addiction, ways to mitigate withdrawal symptoms like methadone therapy, the development of reliable rating methods and questionnaires for subjective drug effects, and cross-drug comparisons and drug tolerance. The subject in Isbell's experiments are described as volunteers. They were recruited from the Associated Lexington Public Health Service Hospital. The hospital was a U.S. government facility for treating drug abuse. Some patients were sentenced drug offenders, while others voluntarily entered for treatment. The subject in ARC experiments were all incarcerated male narcotic offenders with a history of drug addiction. The subjects signed a simple consent form, and they were motivated by payment in the form of drugs, and usually opiates. Subjects in the experiments are described as physically healthy former drug addicts who were not psychotic, although they often were described as having character disorders or inadequate personalities. Subjects in some of more extreme psychedelic experiments, including LSD doses, for 77 days in a row. And the ones they did that to were all black males. That's weird. Some of the experiments, including addiction to opiates, alcohol, barbiturates, or new minimally tested pharmaceuticals, and then forcing immediate and severe withdrawal onto them. So that's what I have about like some of the stuff that Harris Isbell was into. And it's just like, I know, like, I think in like another prior episode or two, there was some of the stuff that did come across with like drug shit and like drug addiction. And it's like, you know, this is a huge fucking issue now. And it's like, you know, why it was like Germany and like Nazi scientists and American scientists already knew this shit. How long ago?
Yeah.
How long?
Yeah, and they would use the addiction against them. They would, you know, because they would say, "Hey, we'll help, you know, we'll give you your fix if you let us give you this particular product." They wouldn't tell them what they were giving them, and then, you know, they would give them LSD, and then, you know, after they would get their heroin. But like, yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Yeah. One of his experiments was for 77 days.
Oh, that's wild, right?
Yeah. It's, yeah. Kept 7 of his subjects on the drug for 77 straight days. When they fell asleep, he used electroshock to wake them.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And an oral surgeon describes how Dr. Isbell destroyed his father's brain and life with CIA-sponsored LSD experiment. His father was a physician and a former senator who became addicted to Demerol after a dental procedure. It landed him at the Kentucky Center for Drug Addiction, a prison.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's actually his stuff is very right there with Nazi stuff, the Nazi experiments, same stuff. And he actually has tested over 800 psychoactive chemicals, it said, including LSD, as his subjects. And of course, like you said, they were African American males, and they were also addicted to heroin. 77 straight days. Imagine the psychosis that somebody would be in with a heroin addiction on top of it. Crazy.
Yeah, you think that would just like fucking snap somebody actually? Like, do you think there's no coming back after that or what?
You know, you can find videos on YouTube from people that he experimented on, and they say that they were never the same. It completely changed them.
Oh, wow.
It was just a complete nightmare. It was the scariest thing.
That's some wild shit.
Yeah, and he's not the only one. He's not the only one. Because you got that Dr. Ewan Cameron we need to talk about.
Okay, yeah. Go on to him. I do have, if you want, I have like some, I can just read off some basic facts and then you can go off with whatever you have. I have like 2 paragraphs, that's it.
On Cameron?
Yeah, yeah. And then after that, you can go if you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we can go to Lily.
Donald Ewan Cameron. Yeah, we'll get that in for sure. December 1901, December 24th, 1901 to September 8th, 1967, was a Scottish-born psychiatrist. He is largely known today for his central role in unethical medical experiments and development of psychological and medical torture techniques for the CIA. He served as president for the American Psychiatric Association at some point, the Canadian Psychiatric Association at some point, the American Psychopathological Association, Society of Biological Psychiatry, and the World Psychiatric Association. I mean, this guy, wow. He was involved in administering electroconvulsive therapy and experimental drugs, hallucinogens such as lysergic acid, LSD, to patients and prisoners without their knowledge or informed consent. Some of this work took place in the context of Project MKUltra program for the developing of mind control and torture techniques, psychoactive poisons, and behavioral modification systems. Whether or not he was aware of this is unknown. Decades after his own death, the psychic driving technique he developed continued to see extensive use in the torture of prisoners around the world. So, like, whatever technique he even supposedly came up with, people replicated. Which I think I might have mentioned that, like, 2 episodes ago when I brought this guy up for, like, 2 minutes. So, that is all I have now. I'm sure you probably have, like, more detailed stuff than that.
Yeah, it's known, his whole method is known as psychic driving. He had different methods. He liked to electroshock people. That was one of his favorite things. And he actually continued electroshock therapy way after it was deemed not effective. He just kept, I guess he was stubborn or something. But he would also do insulin. He would use insulin to put people in comas and stuff as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's actually a term that they use for it. I can't quite remember it. But yeah, he would use insulin as well to put people in comas and different stuff like that. And he would, part of his psychic driving technique, he would play a sound over and over and over, like 16 hours a day on repeat, the same thing. It might be, your mom hates you. Or the next day might be, oh, your dad loves you. And it's just on repeat. 16 hours.
That's wild.
Yeah. He might include strobe lights. He might I mean, he would literally keep these people awake. He would use the same technique as Harris. You know, if they tried going to sleep, he'd just shock them. But then certain people, he wanted them in comas. Like, it just depended on what experiment he was doing. And he was actually part of the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal, or Ravenscraig. And so a guy we talked about previously, Alan Dulles. So Alan Dulles' son was highly affected by the Korean War. And Dulles actually sent his son to Cameron for help. And he basically put his son into the MKUltra program. He just did the same stuff he did to everybody else. And I think the guy actually lived quite a long time, his son. I think he died recently, but I don't know how affected he was the rest of his life. But yeah, Alan Dulles put his son into Dr. Cameron's care. Jeez. And this guy worked in Canada. And Cameron was the head of the American Psychiatric Association, head of the Canadian Psychiatric Association and head of the World Psychiatric Association. So he's your top guy. He's your top guy. Psychiatry and psychiatry field, this is the guy. The number one, top of the pyramid is Cameron. He ran it all. Everybody, I guarantee his techniques, everybody used his techniques. His techniques were the ones taught. Now, I'm sure he learned stuff from previous people. I know Cameron, when he was younger, he was big into like hypnotism and stuff like that. So I'm sure hypnotism was also used as well, like a guy we'll talk about next, Jolly West, next episode. The hypnotism, man, it just keeps coming into play. All these guys seem to know or be intrigued by it when they were young. Like even before they're like a part of these programs and stuff. So they're already wanting to like kind of control somebody or be able to do that. Yeah, Cameron, so that place was in Montreal. There's a documentary on YouTube you can watch called Fifth Estate. I think that might be the company that does it, but it's on Cameron, and they actually have people in that he experimented on, and they actually give their accounts of what happened and how horrifying it was. There's some people, they literally don't even remember anything of that time they were there. Their memory is completely wiped. Like they do not remember it at all. This dude was doing some sick stuff, because you know that electric therapy, it did nothing.
No, that just screwed a lot of people up.
And a lot of the people in that Fifth Estate documentary, he did give them LSD and stuff, and they talked about he would repeat phrases over and over and over and over, and all kinds of stuff. He had different ways of doing the psychic driving, and apparently it's an effective interrogation technique, and it's still used today. They say other countries use it. It's like used at Guantanamo Bay, like a version of it, and different places like that. I'm sure it's used as the CIA, when they're over in different countries. I'm sure they're using these same methods, although maybe improved upon. But this Cameron guy, it's sick, man. And these people never got any justice from it. Like, Cameron died in 1967, so luckily, hopefully it ended when he died. They're doing experiments on people and stuff. But if you actually go, we can show you the place that he worked at, the Ravenscraig. Right there. That's actually 1953, it says. So that's during when he was there. There it is, maybe today.
Yeah, recently.
Or at least a more modern. Looks scary as hell. But that's Ravenscraig, and that's part of the Allen Memorial Institute. It's also part of McGill University, I think is the name of it. Good old Jordan Peterson went there, and a bunch of other weird connections to McGill University as well. But it's on the property of McGill University. I'm not sure if that's actually destroyed now. It looked like they were going to be building homes over the top of it.
You can definitely see from the older pictures that society has definitely crept up on that building.
Yeah, it used to be some farmer's field.
Yeah.
Also, I almost forgot, Cameron was actually used in World War II. The Nuremberg trials. I think I sent you a picture of Rudolf Hess. You'll see he's got the real thick eyebrows. So that's Rudolf Hess. So he was like number 3 in Germany. Big occultist, huge occultist. He so Cameron actually was brought to the Nuremberg trials to be evaluated mentally and all that. And in fact, Cameron actually went to the same school as Jung did. So kind of interesting. Jung was used to do like a psychological analysis on Hitler. Now Cameron's being brought in to do an analysis on Hess. And like the whole thing with Hess is he actually he like translated Mein Kampf and okay, he was supposed to take over basically. There might have been another guy above him or a couple of them above him, but he was very high up. But he his trip to Scotland, so he flew to Scotland. He was supposed to meet and actually kind of work out a deal. And he actually, that whole flight was all set up through astrology and everything. It's something you could get into at one point. His whole trip flight to Scotland was all set up through astrology, and he had to fly at the right time. And the astrologer in Scotland agreed because all this and that. But anyways, he got caught, and they basically arrested him, brought him to the Nuremberg trials eventually. And I think he actually he was like in prison for like the rest of his life, like 45 years or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but I just wanted to say Cameron was used in World War II, to diagnose some Nazis. I'm sure he was used with some other Nazis as well that might have been brought over.
Isn't it like conflict of interest?
Yeah. Should be.
Right? I mean, what's...
Yeah. But that whole trial was a kind of a sham.
That's
anyways.
what I think. So
yeah.
I think it was just to
you got to put a few couple top ones in prison. The rest you kind of scatter out.
The shit was as real as wrestling.
Yeah, exactly.
Was there anything you had on him, or you want me to? I could wrap it up with Lily, and then we could cover the rest on the next one.
I had probably some more I could cover on camera.
Sure, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, that's good.
Okay,
that's good.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, so now I'll get over to Lily. Rather interesting character. The whole story, I think, is kind of funny and just weird and bizarre. And it's just like one of those wild stories, I think, that you'll hear about if you look into MKULTRA enough. Some people may have heard it already or not, but it's just funny and wild, and I wanted to cover it anyway. So we have John Cunningham Lilly, and he was an American physician, neuroscientist, psychoanalyst, psychonaut, philosopher, writer, and inventor. Lilly conducted high-altitude research during World War II and later trained as a psychoanalyst. In the 1950s, he developed the isolation tank. With the isolation tank, he saw that he was able to kind of isolate them from almost all external stimuli, and as a means to explore the nature of human consciousness. He later combined that work with his efforts to communicate with dolphins. He began studying how bottlenose dolphins vocalize, establishing centers. Let me fix that. He began studying how bottlenose dolphins vocalized, and he started establishing centers in the U.S. Virgin Islands and later San Francisco to study dolphins. A decade later, he began experimenting with psychedelics, including LSD, often while floating in isolation. His work inspired 2 Hollywood movies, The Day of the Dolphin from 1973 and Altered States from 1980, as well as the video game series Echo the Dolphin, which I actually remember that fucking game. It's set in
I don't remember that one.
Yeah, I do. It's wild. It's set in 1934. Lily read Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. The pharmacological control methods of Huxley's dystopia and the links between physical, chemical process of the brain and subjective experiences of the mind helped inspire Lilly to give up his studies of physics and pursue biology, eventually focusing on neurophysiology. In 1961, a group of scientists, including Lilly, gathered at Green Bank Observatory to discuss the possibility of using the techniques of radio astronomy to detect evidence of intelligent life outside the solar system. They called themselves the Order of the Dolphin, after Lilly's work with dolphins. They discussed the Drake equation, used to estimate the number of communicative civilizations in our galaxy, and Carl Sagan was also a part of this group. Figured I'd just throw that in there. Dr. Lilly began working with dolphins in the late 50s, convinced that they are highly intelligent and use a form of language. In one of his more disturbing experiments, a female assistant lived with a dolphin in a partially flooded house for months, attempting to teach it to speak English. Didn't work, but it did develop a sexual attraction towards the woman. Lilly admitted in an interview that he had indeed given acid to dolphins to see what would happen. What happened, according to him, was that they tripped on LSD, swimming away from their sonar and bobbing along the surface of the water. He claims that they had wonderful trips and displayed behavior coming closer to him, odd floating positions that they previously had not, which doesn't seem that surprising. I mean, they're high on ass. Lilly noted that dolphins on LSD were far more vocal than usual. This was measured through a duty cycle, or the percentage of time that a dolphin will spend vocalizing per minute. Without anxiety or stimulation, the duty cycle for sober dolphins can oscillate wildly from 0 to 70%. With dolphins on LSD, the duty cycle was very frequently does not drop to 0 at all. When a human or another dolphin entered the tank that contained the dolphin on LSD, this would cause the vocalization to rise to about around a 70% duty cycle for 3 full hours. So, I mean, I guess this thing was going off. Basically, as soon as the dolphin was on LSD, it wouldn't shut up, really. And you can't, you put it on LSD, and if it came in contact with like another intelligent mammal, these things wouldn't shut up. Lilly recalled a particularly amazing result of his experiments, which involved a dolphin that had been rescued after being shot through the tail 3 times with a spear gun. The dolphin's previous owners had enjoyed a close relationship with the dolphin until the traumatic incident occurred. But after it happened, she would not come near human beings at all. 2 years later, after the incident, Lilly used the dolphin as one of his control subjects and injected her with 100 micrograms of LSD. As the LSD effect came on, 40 minutes after the injection, the dolphin came over to me, Lilly wrote. She had not approached me before. She stayed in the tank with one eye out of the water, looking me in the eye for 10 minutes without moving. This was a completely new behavior. I moved around to see if this would be any effect, if it would cause any effects from his movements, and she followed me right around the edge of the tank. She will now come within 5 feet of me instead of staying 20 feet away. Lilly eventually built a laboratory housing a workspace on the upper level and a dolphin enclosure on the bottom, on the shore of the Caribbean. He called that the Alabaster Building Dolphin Point. When 23-year-old local Margaret Howe Lovett realized that the lab existed, she drove out there out of sheer curiosity, supposedly. She remembered stories from her youth where, she remembers when as a kid you hear about talking animals, and that, some of her favorite characters from being a child were like talking animals. So, supposedly this is her interest for going there. I do question, actually, the backstory of like how these people just met by pure happen chance for this to happen. Maybe it's true. It really could be. Maybe this guy was like, here's some fucking annoying, naive bitch that I can just pimp out for this experiment. Who knows? But I just find like this story of like how she just like, oh yeah, it's there, and then fucking months later she's jerking off a dolphin on LSD. Like, how the fuck does this?
Crazy.
Yeah, right. But arriving, like, how do you? This is. I really hope there's actually a better backstory to this, because like, I mean, it's like, how did we get to here?
She had to have had that thought, like, what did I get myself into?
Arriving at the lab, Lovett encountered its director, Georgie Bateson, a well-known anthropologist. When Bateson asked her, why are you here? She replied, well, I heard you had dolphins, and I thought I'd come and see if there was anything I could do. Bateson allowed Lovett to watch the dolphins. Perhaps wanting to make her feel useful, he asked her to take notes while observing them. Both he and Lily realized her, she was very eager to help, and despite any training, she was like very open to like helping. So they kind of realized that. Margaret Howe Lovett hated leaving in the evenings and still feeling that there was much work left to do. So she convinced Lily to let her live in the lab, waterproofing the upper rooms and flooding them with a couple of feet of water. This way, human and dolphin could occupy the same space. Lovett chose Peter for the revamped immersive language experiment. They coexisted in the lab 6 days of the week, and on the 7th day, Peter spent time in the enclosure with Pamela and Sissy. Through all Peter's speech lessons and voice training, Lovett learned that when we had nothing to do was when he did the most. He was very, very interested in my anatomy. If I was sitting here and my legs were in the water, he would come up and look at the back of my knee for a long time. He wanted to know how that thing worked, and I was so charmed by it. Charmed might not be the best be the word to describe how Lovett felt when Peter, an adolescent dolphin with certain urges, became a bit more excited. She told interviewers that he would rub himself on my knee, my foot, or my hand. Moving Peter back down to enclosure each time this happened became a logical nightmare. So reluctantly, Margaret Howe Lovett decided to satisfy the sexual urges of the dolphin manually. It was just easier to incorporate that and let it happen. It would just become part of what was going on, like an itch. Just get rid of the scratch and we would be done and move on. What?
Yeah, I remember she would she would kind of describe it like if she didn't, that he would be like really like aggressive and mean, and like she would get like bruises and stuff all over because he would like run up and like hit her and stuff.
Lovett insist it wasn't sexual on my part. Sensuous, perhaps. It seemed to me that it made the bond closer, not because of the sexual activity, but because of the lack of having to keep breaking. And that's what really all it was. I was there to get to know Peter. That was part of Peter. Oh. That's in quotations. Oh, man. These events are described in his books, Programming and Metaprogramming in the Human Biocomputer, published in 1968, and The Center of the Cyclone, published in 1972. The term human biocomputer refers to the hardware of the human anatomy, including the brain, internal organs, and other human organ systems, such as cardiovascular, digestive, endocrine, immune, lymphatic, muscular, nervous, reproductive, and respiratory, skeletal, and urinary systems. The biocomputer has stored programmed properties and self-metaprogramming properties with limits determinable and to be determined. Lily's work on human biocomputer paradigm has been influential in the fields of neuroscience, psychology, and artificial intelligence.
Yep.
That's some wild and weird stuff with this.
Yeah, he was big into that. He also had, yeah, that's him right there.
Yep.
The one on the left, that's like a famous interview where he's wearing like a raccoon cap.
Oh, that's what. Okay, that's what it is. All right, because I was looking at it, I was like, yo, he's got some like wild like hair going on.
Yeah.
Oh, that's like, yeah, I can see the tail on the hat now. Yeah.
And originally he was like working for the NIH, and he wanted to, the military wanted him to start doing certain experiments, and he left NIH because he didn't want to partake in the experiments. Apparently, he thought they were unethical or something. Yeah, this guy's interesting. Here, go over to the other pictures of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just thought that book was so fitting for you.
Yeah, that's some wild
so
stuff.
crazy.
Got the eyeball symbolism in there. Simulations of God.
And he would, like with the dolphin, he would actually have his isolation tank up above the tank of where the dolphin is, and he would have an IV drip of like ketamine or like acid or something, and he would like try to like telepathically communicate with the dolphin and everything. And he did think that he could communicate telepathically with dolphins.
Yeah, I remember him thinking that shit too. Yeah.
And do
you think that was just? Do you think he really believed that? Or do you think that was an excuse for like? Because I think at some point they were like he wasn't getting any results supposedly. Do you think like he was just like, oh no, but it's telepathic, or do you think like he actually believed it?
I think he believed it.
Okay, no, I was just wondering if it was also like some fucking.
No, I think he believed it because he had a lot of interesting, weird theories on different things.
Well, he also did like a ton of shit too.
He had a thing called. What's it called? I know he did like this extraterrestrial thing where he was trying to communicate with like aliens out in the universe and stuff through like radio frequencies or something. And then he also was trying to do he had this thing called the Earth it was like Earth something control office. And it was supposedly like this group of like cosmic beings that like ran like the simulation in a way. Like they ran the universe. They ran like it was like a galactic federation thing.
Oh, okay.
And there was like all kinds of like there's all kinds of stuff behind it. It's you could probably do a pretty interesting episode on his little theory.
Well, even that stuff with him and Carl Sagan and the dolphins, I'm sure. I mean, that whole
him taking all those drugs is what caused him to come up with this theory of these entities. Have you ever seen that movie about him, Altered States?
No.
It's like it's from the 80s. It's pretty trippy. It's kind of cheesy just because of, it's not the graphics and stuff. But it's pretty interesting at the same time. Like it's based off his stuff, but spoiler alert, I guess a little bit. The guy like it ends up like basically like becoming like a skinwalker or like turning into different like he like turns into like a different like shape shifts. That's what I was looking for. He's like he like turns into this other creature. And he's like in the isolation tank, always like on acid or something. It's a pretty crazy movie.
Oh,
it's a pretty crazy movie. I've watched it.
I'll have to check it out now.
Yeah, it's yeah, you have to watch it once. It's not like an amazing movie to watch, but just the stuff that's in it is pretty wild. The concepts and stuff. But yeah, Lily, Yeah,
He was a character.
he was a character for sure. Like, I mean, he literally invented the isolation tank too. Like, and like people say, like just those tanks alone kind of get you into that kind of like an altered state, like an out of body experience kind of thing.
No, I definitely think that's for sure possible. Definitely. I mean, if you even look at like some of the things that we've talked about throughout all these shows, I mean, there's actually a lot when covering, I guess, like these people associated with MKUltra and the LSD and like even the other drugs. You do see like a lot of like some of their techniques as like becoming staples or like known as like becomes very prominent. You know, so like you even not with everything else that we're talking about. Again, like with the LSD, but in other areas, like these people seem to be kind of influential in other ways that stay, Again, even with the whole, I guess, 100%. Questioning and the questioning the prisoners and the interrogation techniques. This guy in that fucking isolation tank, you have like a lot of stuff like that I think is very interesting. That seems to pop up quite often.
You kind of triggered something that I thought of that I've kind of been thinking, and I've noticed looking into a lot of these guys that a lot of them that are like involved with the like psychedelic stuff, like me looking into them, you'll see that people deify them, like they make them into heroes, and like the negative stuff, like if they're associated with MKUltra, is not talked about at all. But like High Times will do like an article on like Gordon Wasson and the godfather of mushrooms, or it just, I don't know. It's just weird to me. It's just weird to me because all these guys are associated with the CIA in one way or another, like Timothy Leary, all these guys. Aldous Huxley. I mean, there's weird stuff with that. Aldous Huxley's, I think, grandfather was like the biggest proponent of Charles Darwin and stuff. Like there's just like all these weird connections with the families and all of it.
All right. Do you think maybe we can wrap it up here? I think.
Yeah.
I think this will be a good place to end it. There was still some stuff that I had on other topics, and I know that you did. Just get to them in the next one. Thresh, thank you very much for jumping on again. I will leave your notes, well, your link and stuff in the bottom. Just a reminder for people again as well, if they haven't shut it off already, switch over to the Occult Rejects RSS feed. This is the last NY Patriot show on this feed. January 1st will be on the Occult Rejects, and that will actually be a whole series with Nyx kicking that off with a 2-part series from her, and then going into a series with Robbie Marks. So look out for that. That will all be dropping on the Occult Rejects, and then we'll be coming back with another episode of MKUltra and tons of other things. But definitely check out the stuff that will be coming out on the Occult Rejects. Thank you very much again, Thrash. This is 5 episodes now. There'll probably be 1 or 2 more. I really appreciate all the time that you spent, and I had a lot of fun doing this. And thank you.
Me too. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for ending this RSS feed with me. So
I'm honored. Honored.
So I guess until the next one on the Occult Rejects RSS feed, and again, like I said, it'll be on all the other platforms where it used to go. Until the next one, everybody be well. Later.